After 9 weeks of work, I can finally share with you my brand new YouTube studio setup. Welcome then to my brand new YouTube studio space, and what can I say about this place? This is something else, by far the best studio space I've ever had, but there is another surprise. Why? Well, cut to the wide shot. So my office is in a shed? Close, but not quite. This is a 14-foot by 8-foot wooden cabin that we have fully transformed into a fully functioning YouTube studio / office space. And what I'd like to do in today's video is share with you a few different things. First, explain why I set up the studio in an outdoor cabin, then show you the building process from the ground up, give an insight on why I set up the office the way I did, give you a little tour of the studio space, break down how much this entire project costs from start to finish, and see if I went over the budget I set myself of £4,500. And finally, leave you with some of the biggest tips that I have learned when it comes to creating a workspace. So let's start by answering the main question. Why is my office set up in a wooden outdoor cabin? For those who watch my content regularly, you'll know that I recently decided to hand in my keys to my own apartment so I can save money on rent and move back in with my parents. The last time I lived here with my parents, I wasn't doing YouTube on a full-time basis, and I was making content in my bedroom, which wasn't the biggest space in the world, but it was sufficient enough. But now I'm in the very fortunate position of being able to pursue YouTube on a full-time basis, and it's kind of necessary for me to have my own dedicated workspace. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough room in the house for me to have my own dedicated YouTube space. But that's when my mum came up with the idea of utilizing some of the garden space and maybe looking at getting a wooden cabin. At first, I wasn't really drawn to the idea, but then when I came to think about it, it sounded kind of cool, because I don't know another YouTuber or content creator that kind of operates in a setup like this, so it makes it kind of unique. And on top of that, it'd be my own dedicated space that I'd have full control over. So we jumped online to have a look at some wooden cabins and then ran into a snag. We realised that these kind of structures are not cheap. I was looking at maybe £4,000 to £5,000 for the cabin alone, and I simply couldn't afford that. So my only solution and hope was to try and email some of these companies to see if they were in any need of content in exchange for a discount off a cabin. After a week or so, a company called Power Sheds responded back to my email, my proposal, and they checked out my content, they liked what they saw, and they wanted to be a part of this project if I featured their cabin in one of my videos. And I said, well, the bonus is it's really going to be actually in all my videos because it's going to be my YouTube space. So they were all on board for this project and offered me a 50% discount on this cabin. Once the cabin was ordered, we had a few weeks to get everything in the garden prepped before the delivery. The first thing that needed to be sorted out was the space for the cabin. This was the only place where the cabin would have fit, and in order to actually have this space available, my parents had to relocate their summer house, move both of their sheds, actually take one down completely and get a smaller one so my office could actually fit in this space. And then the base for the cabin needed to be measured and laid out. Now this is where I have to give the biggest shout out to my wonderful parents, because they were the real MVPs during this entire project. Without them, this cabin, this office space wouldn't actually be ready yet. They got nearly everything sorted without me, because at the time I was still living 80+ miles away in Bradford. I was preparing to move out of my apartment myself, and that was taking time, and also I was working. So I was really stretched for time myself. So my parents were using their own weekends, their own spare time to sort all of this out. So they helped me out by fighting through the typical British weather to collapse sheds, build new ones, relocate summer houses, pick up paving slabs, get the base laid. I mean, they did the whole 9 yards. So thanks to them and all their hard work, everything was set and ready for when the cabin was delivered. And I would like to just say a massive thanks to my mum and dad, because without them, This wouldn't even be done yet. When the offers did arrive, it came on the back of a massive 18-wheeler, which made it very clear how much of a challenge this was going to be to build. And I'll be honest, I don't have the skills or the patience to be able to build something like this, and if I tried, something would inevitably end up on fire. So to avoid that, I decided to hire a couple of joiners who got it up in a jiffy. From what I could see and from what I was told, the building process was actually quite simple. The instructions were very clear, and within no time, it was completed. It took around a total of 10 working hours to be fully finished and was done over a day and a half. And when the building was complete, I could really start to see the studio coming together. Here we are then. It has just finished being built, and look at it. Look at this space for filming content. Yeah, I can't wait to start decorating it, painting it, getting the carpets in, getting the furniture in, getting it all sorted, because once all that's done, it's going to look pretty damn good. When it came to the interior, I first had to decide on the colour scheme, and after a lot of deliberating, I decided I wanted to go for an industrial aesthetic, settling first on an ebony black for the back wall and oak for the rest. Painting did take an age, with the ebony black needing 4 coats to stain the wood to get the kind of tone we wanted, and the oak, which we had quite a lot of trouble getting our hands on, but when we did, that only took 2 coats. I was skeptical on my choice of stains, but when it was all complete, I knew I'd made the right decision. I absolutely love how these colours contrast, and the icing on the cake for me was the dark grey carpet, which on top of being aesthetically pleasing and comfortable, provides a couple of additional benefits. The first is sound. This space had horrific echo, and fitting the carpet solved that right away. And the second benefit is heat. I haven't done any installation here because the wood panels are quite thick, and that maintains quite a lot of warmth. And on top of that, when I'm filming and I've got video lights on, I've got cameras rolling, I've got all these lights on in the background, and I'm in here, you can imagine it gets quite stuffy and quite warm pretty quickly. But in the evenings, it does get a little bit chilly, so we might insulate just the roof and the roof alone. But then my only other concern then is in the summer months, it might be a sauna in here, and not in a good way. Now, just before I give you the walkthrough of the studio tour, I have got a couple of notes here on how I wanted this studio to kind of function and work. So firstly, I wanted this studio space to be functional. Before I moved in here, I had a pretty good idea on how I wanted things to be laid out. In past setups, I've only really ever had maybe 1 or 2 static angles to film talking head from, and for me that becomes a little bit repetitive. I like to mix it up from time to time. And I think sometimes if audiences watch regular content from a creator they like, they might watch a particular video and think, is this the same video that I watched maybe a few weeks ago? Because the video looks exactly the same. So the bonus with this space is I can film from here, 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 and here with everything in the background. The second thing I wanted this space to do is inspire me, as this is going to be somewhere I'm going to be spending a lot of time planning, filming, and editing. So if you take a gander at some of the things in the background of this place, you'll notice that there are things that talk about me and my personality and things I like. So I have things like Star Wars figurines, I have Formula 1 memorabilia, I have a lot of cameras all over the place, and it's just a nice place for me to walk into because it just feels homely and it feels like my man cave, lack for a better word. The only thing I'm missing in this space though, and I am going to be changing that in the next month or so, are some prints. I've had a hard time deciding on where I should put prints in here and which ones I should choose because I've got so many, but I would like to put some canvases in here, and I think that would be the cherry on top. So what we're going to finally do now is the studio tour itself. We're going to give you a little walk around of this space, how I've set it up, and show you a little bit of some of the individual elements in here in case you're interested. So we'll start at the back of the studio, and what we've got on this top cabinet are just some old really cool cameras. Again, this is just speaking about me, my personality. You might notice here I have a fake plant. You'll notice that around the entire setup. I do not have real ones because I'm a fraud. I also have a golden globe here for travel. I've got my hand holding my blower. That sounds weird. We'll just move right past that. Up here we have got Negan on the electric box protecting it with his Ferrari F50. And then here we have this nice little quote about photography that also talks about life as well. So when you come in and go in from the studio, it's just sometimes nice to read that, you know. And then here I've got this little cabinet where I just store one of my camera bags. I also have a grey card behind it for setting white balance. These are brilliant. At the bottom of this cabinet, I have this cage which I use for storage. I store my video light bags in there and my softbox lights. In this corner is normally a video light, but that's currently behind the camera. That's the more mobile one that I can move around if I want to change the setup. It is a Sakani X60 RGB, and on the front is a 22-inch newer softbox. Now moving on into the middle of the room, and I can share with you one of my favorite things in this entire setup. This unit right here is brilliant because it's on wheels. I love this thing. I found this in IKEA and I knew immediately I had to have it. One of the problems I've got in this space is I don't have any surface space to actually film any product B-roll, and I needed a solution. And I found this, and the brilliant thing is obviously I can move it into the middle of the room and then I can film it from any angle and have what I've set up as a backdrop. And then when I'm done with it, I can just pop it back into the corner like it was never there. This is also a really handy unit because it has a couple of shelves. So the bottom one is reserved for like toolboxes, camera boxes, and just some other random miscellaneous items. And then the second shelf is reserved for tripods, light stands, and also this brilliant thing right here. What this is my overhead camera rig, and I have always wanted one of these, and I'm so thrilled to finally have one because this is going to add so much variety to my content, and I just love an overhead shot. I've already tried it out once doing an unboxing for the Viltrox 75 F1.2, and it just looks brilliant. Now this isn't technically designed for overhead camera rigging. This is technically a mic stand that I have put an adapter screw on so I can put a tripod head on, because this can support up to 3 kilograms worth of weight. So I can use this with a Sony a7 IV or an a7S III with the Viltrox 24 Prime. So all I need to do to set this up is clamp this onto the side, and in no time I can have an overhead perspective shot like this. And to add even more variety, in here I have got A2 colour pieces of paper that I can put on this space, so when I am doing those overhead shots I can have different background colours, which is also going to be kind of ideal if I want to do thumbnails against a certain colour. So you might have noticed I have got a couple of things on the ceiling here. The first thing is this light tube, which if I turn on just shines onto the background here and gives me a little bit of separation when I'm filming from the main camera angle and set up over here. And then up here, you might notice this little clamp. This is leading to a pocket LED light, which is being used as my hair light. And the best thing is, because it's on a clamp and on this middle beam, no matter where I set up the camera, I can always have a hair light so I can separate myself from the background. Against the back wall here, we have this shelving unit, which again is just being used to show some of the things that I like to add my personality in here. So we've got some hats. We've got Ayrton Senna, Clementine from the Walking Dead Telltale games, Max Verstappen, #1 Red Bull hat, and then we have my New York Yankees hat from Times Square. And then on this shelf here, you might remember my last setup, this is where I stored a lot of my cameras, but because this is an outdoor wooden cabin, I didn't think it was safe to be leaving all my very expensive lenses, cameras out here overnight, so they're currently stored in my room on a different shelf. So I thought in here instead, I put out some vintage cameras that I got given to me. The bottom 2 shelves down here are for more practical use, so I have got storage for my microphones, batteries, filters, any equipment that I might need quick access to. And then I've also got a couple of storage boxes again, and then my Lowy Pro 450 AW2 camera bag. You might notice I do have some under shelf lighting, which I will leave links for in the description, but the top one is kind of different to the rest because these are actually, again, pocket LED lights. I don't find myself hardly ever using pocket LEDs, so they just often sit in a bag, but they actually make for great lighting on this top shelf here. And the best thing is, they're constantly plugged in with a Type-C cable, but if I ever need to take them away with me, they're on Velcros. Now let's head our way over to the desk setup, and this is where the real fun begins. Let's start at the obvious place with the desk itself. This is the FlexiSpot E7 standing desk. By far the best desk I've ever had. It's incredibly well built with tons of surface space that I've been able to fully utilize. Now I'll be honest here, I don't hardly ever use this thing as a standing desk. I much prefer my arse planted in a nice comfy chair, which I've now finally got. This is a Secret Labs gaming chair and it's my Facebook bargain of the year. Normally these chairs retail for what, around £500? I found this thing on Facebook Marketplace for only £200. When I've been using this for editing, this puts me in a really good posture. It keeps my back nice and straight and it's great for those long editing sessions. And also, the comfort of this thing is fit for a king. My entire setup is ran off this MacBook Pro. This is the one with the M1 Max chip, 32 gigs of RAM. It is an absolute beast. It's an absolute weapon. Yes, earlier in the year I got converted from Windows, from desktop to laptop to Mac, but I don't regret it. This is probably one of the best upgrades I've ever had to my setup. The most recent addition to this setup is the monitor itself, which has been very kindly sent to me by BenQ. It just so happens a few weeks ago I was actually looking at getting a newer monitor. However, I quickly realised that they were way out of my budget and I couldn't afford one. And that's when, roughly at the same time, I got a message from BenQ offering me this one for free. Now, to give you a bit of info, this is the BenQ PD 322OU, a 32-inch 4K monitor, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. The design of this monitor is very slick. I actually like that the branding isn't on the monitor itself, rather the base. The ergonomics are well thought out, meaning there is a lot of adjustability to meet the needs of any setup. And the connectivity to this monitor is brilliant. I just connect my MacBook to it using the included Thunderbolt 3 cable and I'm set. You also get this cool little puck device which you can use to quickly adjust the monitor settings, which I really do like because it saves you clambering behind the monitor. In terms of its specs, as I mentioned, this is a 32-inch 4K HDR monitor that is purposely designed for creators. So if you are a designer, an illustrator, an animator, a filmmaker, a photographer, no matter what you do creatively, this thing has you covered. I've never experienced better colors on a monitor before, and that's because this has BenQ's AQ color technology and ICC sync, which ensures truthful and lifelike color reproduction syncs across all devices. It has fantastic color accuracy. It supports 95% of DCI P3, Display P3, 100% of sRGB and Rec 709 color gamuts, so for color grading, this thing is top notch. Now I guess the big thing to talk about with this desk setup is this mangled contraption in the corner. So starting behind the desk, I have a light stand with the same small softbox like the one I showed earlier, and I'm also using another Sakani X60 RGB. This one is set up as my key light. On the light stand itself, I've also hooked up this clamp to a magic arm, to this Insta360 selfie stick, to this tripod head, to the microphone. I'm using the Rode Video Mic Pro Plus for all my videos. This thing is fantastic. It captures really clear, crisp sound, and because I've got it positioned like this, it's always above my head, so I'm always getting the best sound possible. And just underneath that, we have my main camera setup. So this complicated octopus arm looking thing is the Tarion desk mount. This is rather brilliant for my desk setup, if I do say so myself, because I can reposition the camera pretty much anywhere by just adjusting the arms. I have added a couple of magic arms and clamps, so one of them is leading to my port keys monitor with the HDMI cable right here, so whenever my camera's here, I can just plug it straight in and monitor everything I'm seeing. And then I've got another one down here, so I can put my phone here, so if I have notes for a YouTube video, I can just put them right here and very quickly and very easily refer to them. This desk setup is something else. I've never had anything like this before, and what I love about it is because it's always set up, it reduces the time between having an idea and hitting the record button. So I think I covered everything in this setup tour. If I did miss anything or you got any further questions, just let me know in the comment section below. But I think the big question now is, did I go over budget? On screen right now are all the expenses that have gone into this project, and having a look over them, holy crap, did I spend a lot of money on Amazon. £542. The delivery drivers must have hated me. So if my maths is right, the grand total was £4,000, starting good. The next numbers aren't so good. £675.28. So I went over budget by £175.28. But you know what? I'll take that. Considering the size of the project, to be over budget by less than £200 isn't too bad. And look at what I've got because of it. I've got this incredible creative space that I can fully utilize to make the videos I want to create, to continue sharing ideas, hopefully inspiring people and growing this community even further. This for me is a dream kind of setup, and I'm so thankful to have it, and I just can't wait to start making more content in here. So finally today, I want to leave you with this. Whilst I think these YouTube studio tours are a great way for people to see behind the curtain on how their favorite creators work in their studio space, they can also make you feel like crap pretty quickly. Because I think it's easy to see a setup maybe like this or some other creator's setup and think to yourself, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make the content I want to create because I don't have that dedicated workspace. And I can speak from experience here, but that is so far removed from the truth. If I'm honest, this is the very first time I've had my very own dedicated YouTube studio space that I've had full creative control over. I started out in my cramped bedrooms making YouTube videos right next to my bed, and that was the same story all the way through my university days. It's taken years of hard work, dedication to be able to have a dream setup like this. Don't get me wrong, having a setup like this is amazing, but when I haven't had something like this in the past, I've never let it stump my creativity. If you need to edit on a kitchen table or film in a cramped bedroom space, then do it. Try not to get distracted by all these fancy setups that have all this really cool gear in. I think it's sometimes important to sit back and remind yourself why you are creating and following your passion. So yeah, I think that concludes this video quite nicely. It does feel good to finally share this setup with you guys because I've been keeping it under wraps for months now, and hopefully you've enjoyed having a look around this place. And if you do have any further questions, let me know in the comment section below. And I'm now looking forward to getting back on a more consistent upload schedule and making a lot more videos. So yeah, I guess until next time guys, create, explore, and inspire. And I'll see you in the next one. Laters.